Hey everyone, it's me, Arthur Kate. So Dev Patel, Ramanujan. He's not your run-of-the-mill mathematician here. This guy has such a unique way of looking at math. Talk to me about that uniqueness of how he sees this all.
To him, mathematics was really a way to express himself. It was his art form, which was really interesting to me. This man was considered an abstract mathematician, so he used to phrase it as painting without colors. And Ramanujan believed that every one of his equations that he made up or solved was a blessing from his God. And he was a strict Hindu Brahmin, so that caused a lot of friction in the mathematical world. But, you know, the proof is in the pudding, really.
It's fascinating to see once he comes to Trinity in Cambridge. When you see the challenges that he had to go through,
Sure.
Talk to me about those challenges, because some of those themes are prevalent today. Most of them.
I think the challenge is really, he had his own religious challenges about breaking his caste and traveling across the sea, leaving behind his child bride, his mother. All that was home to him to achieve this goal. And then he landed in Cambridge and faced so much resilience, not only because of the way he looked, the way he dressed, his ideologies in the mathematical field. He was up against it in every way, and really the only branch he had to cling on was G.H. Hardy, played by Jermey Irons, and together they, changed the world of mathematics.
Such a wonderful relationship with Hardy, because you
Yeah.
couldn't find, I was talking to Jeremy about this, you couldn't find more polar opposites than the two of these guys, and yet
Sure.
there was this incredible connection. Talk to me about that connection, because it's funny, Hardy at the end says this is the only romantic relationship I've really ever had, but it wasn't really just romantic, you know?
It was. I think it was. I guess they nourished each other in very different ways, and I think that comes from first challenging the other person's ideology.
When you're not out saving the world with Batman, you're helping genius mathematicians stay in college and do great things. Talk to me about this story and telling it, and the courage behind this man's journey.
Well, here we have a young Indian man who dreamed his theorems and dreamed his equations, and who knew that he was not being taken seriously because he had no formal education, because he only cared about mathematics in India, so he never really stayed in any college for very long. And his employer, we talk about 1912, 1913, his employer helped him and encouraged him to write to Cambridge in England, a long way away, but great university with great mathematicians, and send some of his notebooks. And most of the dons in Cambridge thought this was a sort of some joke, because the notebooks were crammed with the most extraordinary mathematics which most of them couldn't understand. G.H. Hardy, who was himself a great mathematician, not as great as Ramanujan, recognized something and said, we have to get this boy over here and get him to prove his theories and find out about this, which he did. And so this young Indian man leaves his wife behind in Madras, comes to Cambridge just at the outbreak of the war, cold, drizzly, full of confirmed bachelors and mathematical discipline, and has to deal with that. And Hardy helps him through it, and through that period develops a relationship, an interesting relationship with him.
Talk to me about the messages that come out from this movie, because there's tones of racism, there's tones of not fitting in. Have you ever experienced these types of situations?
Absolutely. I mean, being Indian, in America comes with all sorts of advantages and disadvantages. And I was born and brought up here, so I think not to the extent that Indians who come here from India have faced. But I think it exists everywhere. And movies like this really open up the dialogue about what we should do about it and how we can change that.
When you look at working with Dev, the chemistry, as I mentioned, between the two of you is wonderful. Talk to me about building that chemistry.
Well, we were in India for 2 weeks together, and you're working long hours, long days, and the entire crew and cast in India got really close. Because when you're in close, like when you're spending a lot of time together, no matter what, in the heat and just working so hard for this movie that all of us are so passionate about, you just end up having this kind of camaraderie. And that, I think, was really important. So all of us got really, really close, and I think that helped immensely with the on-screen chemistry.
I heard you saying over there, 12 years in the making, and here you are, you were at the Tribeca Film Festival, you're here in New York for this premiere. This movie, I love the premise of it. Why did it take 12 years?
Well, I just, I think it's just the subject matter is not a Hollywood recipe. It's unfortunately. I wish that more of these kinds of films would be embraced, but it takes a long time sometimes to get people to believe in telling the story. It had to be a perfect storm, I guess, to have the right actors say yes, have the right financiers, and I had a producer in Ed Pressman that stood by me for all those years and refused to let us compromise creatively in any way or any form. So it was a lot of belief in wanting to tell this particular story.